Alright, so let's have a look at some physics stuff in Blender 2.90 as it stands. And I'm just gonna click off the splash screen, and the first thing I want to show you guys is rigid bodies. So let's keep the cube here for now. I'm just gonna move it upwards a bit. Press G and Z once to move it on the Z axis so we can move it up. And I'm gonna hit Shift A, add a mesh plane, and I'm just gonna scale this plane up. So that's gonna be our floor. Hit S once and move your mouse. So there's a nice floor. And maybe scale it up even more. Alright, so we're gonna need to give these objects physics properties. So the floor is gonna be a passive physics object. We can change it from here. All the physics properties reside here in this tab, this circular blue tab. And when the floor is selected, I'm just gonna click on rigid body and change the type to passive. Then I'm gonna select the cube and change it to rigid body and keep it active. Now if I play the animation, the cube is going to fall on the floor and stop there. So that's working. I might just want to end my animation a bit earlier so I don't have to wait that long. So 100 frames is good. What could I do with this? Well, I could, for example, build a wall of blocks with the cubes, which I could do like first, maybe move the cube here closer to the floor. When working with physics, it's important that you leave a gap between the physics objects so they don't explode. Let me demonstrate. If you put the physics objects inside each other, and hit play, there's going to be an explosion like that. So you don't want to have them intersect. Alright, I'm just gonna put this object here. Duplicate it by holding down Shift and pressing D. So Shift D, and I can duplicate it, and by pressing Y, I can lock it on the Y axis. So it moves like this. Then I'm gonna select both of these and duplicate them. Shift D, move them there. Shift D, and then I'm gonna choose the whole row. Shift D, move them up and slightly on the Y-axis. Shift D again, move them up on the Z-axis, and move them there. And that's just they're a bit far, so I'm gonna close the gaps a bit. Shift D, Z, move it on the Y-axis like so. Right. So now if I play the animation, there's going to be a wall of blocks. All right. So if I wanted to wreck this wall, I could add a wrecking ball. Just going to move the floor a bit. Well, actually, let's have the wrecking ball approach from here. So where the blocks hit the floor. Actually, I could just resize the floor way bigger. Let's add Shift A mesh UV sphere as our wrecking ball and scale it up. Move it there. Maybe scale it down a bit. All right, so we want to have our wrecking ball reach a point behind the wall. So it's going to start here. I'm just going to have it selected and add a keyframe by pressing I for internet on my keyboard. Choose location. And then you choose the point in time where you want to have the wrecking ball reach its destination, which is somewhere here. I'm going to insert the keyframe location and let's see the speed. So the speed is like that. That's pretty good. Then we're going to have to give it physics properties. So rigid body, active is good. let's make it animated. So tick this box, animated, and let's see what happens. And our wrecking ball works. So that's how you make a wrecking ball. If you wanted to speed it up, you can choose this keyframe here and just move it closer to the other one. So you'll have it faster and the blocks are flying all around. And if you want to move it slower, you can move it further there on the timeline and the blocks just tumble down. Very nice. All right, what if you wanted to have a wall made out of a shape, like a single shape that you would have? So I'm just gonna press C for circle select so I can easily select all the objects here. And while I'm at it, I might actually, when I have all the cubes selected, I could move them to a collection just to keep this nice and manageable. So all the cubes here are now selected. I'll go over here and actually there's new collection button here on the top right corner. Click that and move the cubes to that collection. Let's name the collection to wall 1, for example. Now we can easily select all the cubes at once by right-clicking on the collection name and clicking on select objects. And I could move the wall on the y-axis away from the wrecking ball. We're just going to work with the same wrecking ball. And let's add one more cube. Let's make this another type of wall. So scale it up and scale it on the x-axis and move it on the x-axis. Maybe lift it up a bit. Right. There we go. So if I wanted to have a shattered object made out of this, I could use an add-on called Cell Fracture. So I can enable that from the edit menu, going into preferences, and here in the add-ons tab, I'm gonna type in the search box Cell Fracture, and it should show up here. In case you haven't already enabled it, it's going to look like this. So if you tick the box, that means it's enabled. All right, so next thing to do is have the object you want to shatter selected and press F3. Then you can type in cell fracture, click on that, and then you get this new window where you can choose many different options. Well, first of all, it's good to have the noise value here all the way up, so you get nice shatters. And then you could have a recursive shatter, which is gonna extend the shattering of your shards. So let's have the recursiveness 5 and random all the way up, and let's make this random too. Yeah. Then if you hit OK, you're gonna see it starts calculating your shattering for the wall. It's gonna take a while. And when it's done, you should see something like this. So it's nicely shattered the wall in the pieces. And you should have all your wall objects selected now. They're here. So you could make a new collection for all of them. So scroll down, add a new collection, make it, oh, okay. So I just accidentally unselected all of the bits. I'm just gonna rename this to wall 2. Then I'm gonna have to reselect all the bits of the wall. So I just might view it from the top, go into wireframe mode by pressing Z and choosing wireframe. Then I could just box select by dragging my left mouse down over the wall. So I could just select all the bits. And then over here, drag and drop them on the wall 2 collection. Very nice. So now I have neatly my walls here in the outliner. I could go back into solid view, click somewhere on the edge of the wall, and you should be able to grab hold of the initial cube, the first cube. You can also access it from here. You select it from the outliner. It's not going to have any of these cell numbers in its name. So you could just click on that and you can just delete it. You don't need it anymore. All right, next thing to do is set up physics properties for each shard. So first we're gonna have to give one of the shards physics properties and then copy that to the rest of them. So I'm gonna choose one, click on rigid body, type active, dynamic, yeah, that's all good. And we're gonna animate it, but let's see at first how it behaves. So this is all good. Let's select all of the rest of the shards by right clicking on the collection name and click on select objects, and you should have your last selected shard there selected as the active one. You could go into object, rigid body, copy from active, and it's going to take a while. And now if you click on any shard, they should have all the same physics properties. And if you play the animation, the wall is going to crumble down. Obviously you don't want this to happen before the impact with the wrecking ball. So how can we avoid this? Well, first of all, the gap between the floor and the wall is a bit too long, I suppose. So we could just select this whole collection, select objects and move them down on the Z axis. G and Z just slightly above the floor, like so. All right, and select one of the shards and we're gonna animate this property dynamic. So we don't want to have it dynamic until the impact with the wrecking ball. So let's see. Let's go using my arrow keys. I can go through the frames one by one. So I'm just going to look for a point where the impact, the collision with the wrecking ball happens. So I'm going to go to frame 19, I suppose. Frame 19. I think frame 20 is already where. Okay, so I could use the annotation marker here. So I'm gonna go to frame 0 first and then just gonna annotate, draw a line here where the edge of the wall originally is, and I'm gonna see in the frames when that wrecking ball meets the line. Go into wireframe view. So yeah, frame 20, that's where we should start the dynamics for the wall. All right, so I'm just gonna change my tool back to selection box and I'm gonna hit I for internet while hovering over the dynamic tick box. So hit that, then go from one frame backwards and untick the box and hit I again. All right. And what you should see now is that the shard that we gave this animation to is starting to react only at frame 20, starting from there. And now we need to copy this animation to the rest of the shards. So I'm going to right click on the collection, select objects, and this is active again. That's what we want. I'm going to click on object, make links, and choose animation data. That's going to copy the keyframes and the animation data to the rest of the shards, so you can see the rest of them have the same animations. Now it should work. So beginning at frame 20, the wrecking ball starts to shatter the wall. There you go.